Welcome on this third day of April to the Thoughts for the Day. And our scripture this morning comes from Philippians chapter 4 and verse 13. I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me. To continue reading the Bible in a year today, we need to focus on 1 Kings chapters 14 and 15 and Luke chapter 22 verses 31 to 46. Some thoughts for the day. Live now. Make now always the most precious time. Now will never come again. Self-importance is our greatest enemy. The past cannot be changed. However, the future is still in your power. The motivation for today: religion feels good. The gospel does good. On this day in 1494, Christopher Columbus, who did not sail off the edge of a flat earth, discovered Jamaica whilst in search for a westward route to the east. In 1999, an F5 tornado hit parts of Oklahoma City, causing a record wind speed of about 301 miles per hour. That's nearly 500 kilometers an hour. 45 people were killed, 665 were injured. In 1999, the body of missing climber George Mallory was found near the summit of Mount Everest. He went missing nearly 60 years earlier. In 2007, British girl Madeleine McCann disappeared from her bed in a holiday apartment in Praia da Luz in Portugal. Her name has recently been in the news because German police now have a definite suspect for her disappearance. In 2018, on this day, the Kilauea volcano on Big Island, Hawaii, begins erupting, forcing the evacuation of the Hawaii Volcanoes National Park and residential areas. The personal story of today is entitled, Has Not God Said It? There are some things that God cannot do. For example, he cannot tell a lie. He cannot tie a knot that he can't undo. He cannot do anything that conflicts with his holy character. What God is determined what God does. Since he is holy, all his attributes share in that perfection. Let me explain what that means to us on a practical level. As a holy God, he is perfect in his righteousness, justice, truthfulness, and faithfulness. His perfect righteousness assures us that we can fully yield to his will because he'll always do what is right. In Genesis 18 and verse 25 we read, Shall not the judge of all the earth do right? His perfect justice means that God will be unquestionably fair. Christians will be rewarded for what they have done, 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 10, and the wicked will be punished according to their works, Revelation chapter 20 and verse 13. His perfect truthfulness assures us that we can take him at his word, as we read in Numbers chapter 23 and verse 19. God is not a man that he should lie. And finally, his perfect faithfulness tells us that he will never let us down. We read in Lamentations chapter 3 and verses 22 and 23, His compassions fail not, they are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. We can have absolute confidence in our righteous, just, truthful, and faithful God because he is holy. God has no other motive than to let your life take priority over every other concern. The devotional thoughts for the day, and the first is entitled, Give as you have received. Household sponges are amazingly versatile. We use them to wash dishes, mop floors, bathe children, clean cars. What makes them so useful is that they can absorb and release liquid over and over again. There's a spiritual principle here, expressed by author Andrew Murray. Wherever there is life, there is a continual interchange of taking in and giving out. The one depends on the other. The giving out ever increases the power of taking in. It is only in the emptiness that comes from the parting with what we have that God's blessing can flow in. Jesus invited thirsty people to come to him and drink in John chapter 7 and verse 37. First and foremost, he was speaking to people who needed to put their faith in him, allowing his Spirit to fill them with the joy and miracle-working power of salvation. In another sense, when you live like a true Christian and serve him, you will recognize the continual need for his Spirit to fill you with blessing so he can work in and through you. Perhaps you are experiencing a heart-tearing trial and you feel dry and thirsty today. Imagine a dry sponge in your hand, ready to absorb more water. Let it teach you that only those who recognize their need for living water will find their thirst satisfied by the power of Christ. When others are in need, give from the great blessings that you have taken. The second thought is entitled, Abide in the Vine, and the scripture comes from John 15, chapters 4 and 5. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself except it abide in the vine, no more can ye except ye abide in me. I am the vine, ye are the branches. He that abideth in me, and I in him, the same bringeth forth much fruit. For without me ye can do nothing. The key words in this passage are abide in me. The word abide means to live permanently, to remain. It's easy to develop a butterfly Christianity, which has us fluttering about all over the place. Like bees or butterflies, we collect a little nectar here and a little there, and then we fly away. But Jesus says we should park, move in, and put roots down. Branches don't hop all over the tree, they remain in the place where they originated. Branches are totally dependent on the stem for life. In the same way, we are totally dependent on Jesus Christ and his Spirit for life. We cannot live without him. In him we live, move, and have our being. We cannot bear fruit without him. We cannot do anything without him. Without Jesus, we are totally helpless. We are totally dependent on him. For centuries, people have created various religious faiths and put their trust in these systems, in people, rituals, and theories. However, if there is no obvious fellowship with Jesus Christ and his people, no outward display of the Spirit's power, all is for naught. Without a life in unison with God and his spiritual gifts, all these things are an empty facade. A wonderful future awaits any person who is motivated to serve both God and man in spirit and truth. Just as it is true that we can do nothing without him, it is also true that with him we can do all things. In Philippians chapter 4 and verse 13, Paul says, I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. In other words, in him you can bear an unlimited amount of fruit. The facts of today. And again, we only have one, but it's another very interesting one, which is why is blood red? The blood flowing through the arteries, capillaries, and veins in our bodies contain many different materials and cells, each with a different function. Part of the amazing creation, we are fearfully and wonderfully made. Plasma, the liquid portion of the blood, comprises more than half of the blood. Plasma itself is light yellow in colour and is thicker than water because it contains many substances in addition to the actual blood cells. These substances include proteins, antibodies that combat disease, fibrin, which helps blood to clot, carbohydrates, fats, salts, and others. Red blood cells, or corpuscles, encased in blood vessels, colour the blood. Since there are about 35 trillion of these tiny round flat discs circulating in one's body at any one time, their sheer number necessarily lends their red colour to the blood. As the young red blood cell matures and takes on an adult form in the marrow of the bone, it loses its nucleus and it increases its production of hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a red pigment or colour of blood, and it contains iron combined with protein. When blood passes through the lungs, oxygen piggybacks onto the hemoglobin of the red cells. From there, the red cells carry the oxygen through the arteries and the capillaries to all the other cells of the body. Carbon dioxide from the body cells returns to the lungs through the veins in the same manner by attaching to the hemoglobin. Red blood cells have a life expectancy of about 4 months before they are broken up, primarily in the spleen, and they are replaced by new blood cells. New cells are continuously generated to replace the old cells that have passed their use-by date and have been destroyed to make room for the younger generation. Let's not forget that, in addition to red blood cells, we also have several types of white blood cells. Truly, we are wonderfully and fearfully made. Let's have a look at some thoughts in verse today. Is hymn 159, I love to tell the story. This is a very relevant set of thoughts, and particularly to the things we've covered in the last few days. They tell us what we are meant to do. We're meant to tell the story, and they tell us why we should do it. Think about them carefully as we go through them. Today we look at verse 1 and the chorus. I love to tell the story of unseen things above, of Jesus and his glory, of Jesus and his love. I love to tell the story because I know it's true. It satisfies my longings as nothing else can do. And the chorus, I love to tell the story. 'Twill be my theme in glory to tell the old story of Jesus and his love. Wonderful words. Don't let them escape. The closing thought for today, Lord, help me to remember that the brightness of your loving presence is always with me. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you've enjoyed the thoughts. Have a blessed day. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning. Bye for now.